Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Alyssa Carpenta, and I am the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Just a note that this event is being live streamed to our YouTube page, so please be aware of the webcam behind you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Through My Eyes, the Journal of Belle Munro by Margaret Munro, published by Friesen Press. Thank you to Margaret for being here tonight. Through My Eyes are the diaries of Belle Munro as imagined by her granddaughter, Frances Margaret Munro. It chronicles the life and times of the Munro family from their arrival in Saskatoon in 1908 through to the end of the First World War. Through My Eyes provides an intimate picture of both the early days of Saskatoon and of a family living in extraordinary times. Frances Margaret Munro was born and raised in Saskatoon. She is the granddaughter of Archie and Belle Munro. She has worked as a school teacher, realtor, restaurateur, and antique store owner. She believes that turning 85 is reason enough to publish a book. I will now turn things over to Margaret. Please give her a warm welcome.
Welcome. Finally, my moment in the spotlight is here. Usually I don't like it. Here are some first acknowledgements I want to say. This book would not have happened if my son, Mark Stovey, he's over in the back, had not taken over the trials of publishing for me. Thanks, Mark. And thanks to my one and only DIL. Her second name should have been Sage. My son, Earl, here he is now. You have been so faithful over the past 3 years, phoning me every other day, keeping me up to date on his 20-some dogs, and my favorite being chicken. Then there's Jake, my youngest grandson. He has phoned almost daily for the last 3 years, and I always look forward to it. Goes, how's it going, Grandma? My only sister, Wynn Parker, has been only a phone call away, and we have enjoyed trying to remember family details. I want to acknowledge my cousin Nan. She lives in Victoria. I did this by hand printing the book, and she offered to type it, and it was a big job. And she's younger than I am, but in the fall, she had a serious stroke. She's fought for 6 months to get some back, no feeling in her left arm. And then she fell recently and broke her wrist on her other arm. So I do want her to remember that she might be watching this. So thanks, Nan. I moved to the villa at the start of COVID. So for a long time, I did not feel a sense of community. Luckily, we had a small writing group that met weekly. They were my first sounding board for my writings of my book. Their encouragement and companionship helped me immensely. A salute to Ruth here, Joan, and Verna, who's also here. Glenda, this is at the St. Vladimir. Glenda is the activities director, and a new friend has been amazing. She helped me make a special launch party at the villa. Many people came, and that day was when I really felt a sense of belonging. And I sold 35 books. Now, talk about a captive audience. I do want to thank Terry Harkness. I just can't believe it, but he's scanned and researched over 90,000, now the number keeps going up, of articles from the original Saskatoon newspapers. He's got about 10 things in the works, but he's been very supportive and a good friend. And then there's Jeff. Jeff O'Brien. We haven't known each other long, but this is going to be a surprise for Jeff, because I call Terry and Jeff my new best friends, whether they like it or not. So many others from many life experiences, and I should mention some from St. Andrew's Church. And I hope after I'm done, people here will take time, they've already done it, to interact and meet someone new. And I will look forward to feedback. I just had a new thought that brought focus. This is a quote. Friends and family are angels who lift us up to our feet when our wings have trouble remembering how to fly. And I'm soaring tonight. Now, before I really begin and settle in to tell you a story. On April 8th, my daughter Jane had her 64th birthday. I felt a little down and neglected. Once a long time ago, I tried to have a pity party. I lay in bed and I tried to wallow and feel sorry for myself. And after about 20 minutes, I thought this is the most boring thing I've ever done. So here I am in that kind of frame of mind. So at April 8th, I spent the next 2 days developing a plan to become depressed. My strategy was to become seriously ill. Every detail was well researched because I like to do that. Example, I was on getting into the university hospital and I found that Tuesday was the best day. And if you check in after 7:30, the shifts have changed and you'll get fresh nurses. I had some time tracking down a schedule for ambulances. Now we wear an emergency button at the villa. And early Tuesday morning, I heard that Glenda, our activities director, usually starts work at 9, but she was in the building. And so at 7:32, I pressed the button and Glenda appeared. From then on, this train I had created was in motion. And just before I went under the knife, I knew I had carried this drama too far and I wanted to get off this train. Advice, don't ever create a fictitious emergency. As I awoke, I thought, I am a published author. Promote. So I carefully chose about 2 people in the hospital and told them I had this book. And for me, a school teacher, I knew it just takes 2 people to spread gossip. So soon I had the whole team at the hospital collectively working to make sure I would be out for my 87th birthday and tonight. At one point, the hype. Oh, I know it is. At one point, the hype for a special plaque saying a published author was in this bed. And thought of donating one. Anyways, thanks to the whole team at Surgery 5505. You all were just what I needed. Of course, I left a copy of my book on the way out. So this ends my story. Now I'm going to give you a chance, and I'm going to give you a choice of 2 topics you'd like me to talk on. The first is my experiences in childbirthing over 60 years ago, or my trip to Scotland about 50 years ago. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. We're here to celebrate a book launch of a published author. I have been writing for many years. I love writing stories, skits, and plays for my primary school students. I did talks for women's groups at church, the odd pretty weak sermon. I just wrote, but did not think of myself as an author. At one time, I happened to be in a group of self-impressed published authors. One woman condescendingly asked me, "Do you write?" Taken by surprise and thinking of all the various things I had written, frantically, I tried to decide if this counted, so I meekly said yes. Then she inquired, "And what's your genre?" Without thinking, I quickly cried, "Obituaries and eulogies." Silence covered the room, and that was the first time I realized there was a subtle difference. And I knew I had to become a published author before I died. And so in January 2023, I became one. The support from staff and people was great. A great mini launch was held on Robbie Burns Day at the St. Vladimir, and it was a splendid day, and I felt being part of the community. Now, I did not realize my head was starting to swell, but then a lady from the attached terrace part, which is the next level, she was out in the hall and she saw my poster about the book, and she gasped and she looked at the poster, and then she looked at me, and then she looked back at the poster, and she bowed and she said, "Margaret Munro, are you the published author?" And she bowed again and expressed that she was thrilled she lived in the same building as an author. Shame to say, my head size increased if I wasn't. The next day, the same lady was strolling around, so I smiled and said hello. She stopped and kind of stared and said, "I don't know you, who the hell are you?" Head back to normal. As this day grew closer, I wrote this in the middle of the night. Oh, I know, and I panicked. What should I say or do at the book launch? I asked a couple of other famous authors, and they assured me that most reverently, read passages from your book. Now, I gave this some consideration, but I decided that if a person had read it, they knew how to read. If they had not read the book, I might be losing a sale by reading from the said book. So last night I thought, a book to an author is like an artist revealing a new work of art. Simple. If you have to ask for the artist to describe the work, then the viewer just doesn't get it. And all viewers' opinions will be unique experiences. So I will not describe or explain my work of art. Some readers, and I found this just from the last while with response to the book, some readers seem to enjoy the storyline of Archie and Belle. That appeals to them. Others have found more satisfaction by getting the correct facts and the stories about Saskatoon. Still others have been impacted by the letters and events of World War I through my father and uncle's letters. Being a teacher, I have asked several, what part of the book made the biggest impression? And I have loved hearing their answers. Now I am open to any questions. For example, if you want to just ask me about my style, my sources of content. And if you don't ask, I will assume you don't really care. And that's great. All I hope for is you got enjoyment or food for thought. That is more than enough for me. Thank you, everyone. So now, good.
I want to know about Scotland 50 years ago.
Oh, I knew you. It was eventful. I went with my 70-year-old aunt, and she was a hoot, so we had a good time. I made special friends with the bus driver. Not bad. Answer that. Anybody else?
I just love to you read out of your book, a little. I just love it. I love to be read to. I've always done that since I was little read, and I've read the books, but I love to read these. So I was happy.
Really, yeah. Anybody got a favorite?
I like the way you, how much your grandmother loved her kids.
Oh, yeah.
How proud she was of you, but I just assume you pick out something. Don't read that necessarily.
Yeah, I didn't have anything marked. Okay, here. My grandmother, when they first moved from PA to
Yeah.
Saskatoon, and the house is still standing at 422 9th Street. And Mrs. Pelizzari owns it now. So I tried in a simple way to kind of, life, when your children are young, life's relatively simple. And simple things are what's important to you. As you go on in life, more serious things happen. And so it changes in what your focus with your children is. And in this case, when they came to World War One, that just changed everything. And it did make a really huge impact on. So early. Okay, I'll read right at the beginning. June 1908. I am beyond excitement. Last Wednesday, we moved into our new house at 422 9th Street in Newtown. Arch was with us in Prince Albert to help us pack. We made arrangements to have all our furniture and goods shipped by train to Saskatoon. And all these facts are accurate, like I didn't make this up. He was a passenger on the same train, so he could keep an eye on our belongings. He hired, and this was a uniform company, the Saskatoon Forwarding Company, to take our belongings to the house. The company provided 2 men to do the carrying and lifting, and they helped him set up all the beds. The children and I stayed 3 nights in a hotel in PA, and then caught the train to Saskatoon all by ourselves. I must say, I couldn't have managed without Willie and Huey. Willie, that's my dad, almost 13, stepped forward and bravely asked a lot of questions. We should have sent more with the furniture, but both boys managed the luggage that we had with us. All the children were excited by the trip on the train, and I think Jim, that's the third son, is going to be like Willie, as he asked endless questions, sometimes to my embarrassment. I'll just read a little bit more. Arch met us at the train and hired the newly formed union bus to deliver us to our front door. After quickly exploring the house from basement to attic, all 6 children announced they were hungry. And I think that's very typical in any century. Before I could even think what to serve, Arch produced 4 cans of tomato soup. Yes, there was tomato soup then, and made a cup of tea. He also bought 2 loaves of fresh bread from Booth's Bakery and some peanut butter. He had bought most of the staples, and of course, a full line of blue ribbon, spices, baking powder, and tea. He was a traveling salesman for that company. And I'll just skip a little bit. After the soup and bread had been devoured, he produced a large sack of Barnum's animal crackers, Geordie's favorite cookie. The 3 older boys should have had larger cookies. As soon, Willie was challenging Hugh and Jim to see who could stuff the most animals in their mouth at one time. Arch declared Jim won and then shut down the fun by removing the bag of cookies. And so I was trying to capture just simple things. And what strikes me is every generation, there's commonality. And so, yeah, and so that was where I thought to start.
Thank you. Okay,
Like,
like that.
I have another question. So did Billy get his own room?
eventually, yeah, this was a 4-bedroom house, but the 4th one was really tiny. And so he decided, that was my grandmother's sewing room. So he decided he wanted that badly enough that he'd share it with her sewing room, and then they spread out the other kids around. So, yeah.
Okay.
I heard that you wrote this with your colleague speaking as your grandmother had spoken.
Yes.
And the English wasn't perfect.
Wasn't the English, I think her English was pretty good.
Okay.
It was my cousin Nan, she felt tons worse than I did. We didn't proofread typos enough. And so she was devastated when I found a few. But I don't think it takes away, like my grandmother didn't know how to spell, but we were going to try and blame it on her. for most ballot, but it didn't quite work. But I forget the page number. This is the best one, and several people have mentioned it. My grandmother was quite serious and shy and not very, sorry. And we wrote accidentally. So we decided to poop some corn. That's the worst. Oh, and the other one I've corrected in most books, but if you get one that isn't, when I give a tribute to Terry Harkness, stroke off the last S. And on page 90, which bothers me, these are the ones I want corrected. The others I don't care about. But I told that the King Edward Hotel was being built and they were all so excited. And it should have said 5 stories high. And somehow we got 15 stories high. So, that's the rest I think you'll just figure out.
Just don't let it happen again.
Yeah.
There's a thing about the book. There's many things about the book, but the times we can't bring them back exactly. But I remember like your grandfather was associated to me in travel.
Yes.
And that was one huge job in the
Oh, yeah.
because they went on later on to the ACT amateur hours. They practically think out of the stamp TV.
That's who the Travelers Parade is named after.
All that stuff. And that's why they could have a 4-bedroom house, I think, because most of us would have gone crazy if we had a 4-bedroom.
I think why they weren't super affluent, but
Pretty close.
my grandfather owned a store in northern Manitoba. And he sold that, so they seem to always have a little nest egg of, money for a car, money for.
Yeah.
So they led a really good life, but not super fancy, yeah. So,
But he definitely would get a good salary.
oh, yeah,
Yeah, and they were able to have things that in those days other people wouldn't have.
yeah, that's right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, and you can't write, I picked this form and this thing. I wish other people would pick up on this and write their stories from a totally different perspective, because I know there are people in Saskatoon, very hard times, really living in not very good situations, and their house of sort of the new wave of houses in after 1907. We've got a picture of archives and the houses identified. And these 2 houses standing alone on 9th Street. They were the new
Yeah,
11th and 12th Street were developed earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this was sort of the first wave of going out. So it was a pretty special house in that.
Yeah.
It had the running water and,
So did you find by going back a generation that it freed you up to speak in a more fictional way than if you placed it within?
thank
Or-
you.
yeah.
I just can't write about myself. This is the phoniest contrived thing. But I found it easy. And another thing, if you're writing like this, Dodge, I hate using quotation marks. So here, I didn't have to because my grandmother wouldn't use quotation marks in her journal. So that's a little tip.
yeah.
Easier style, yeah. So that's it.
Since you brought up sources, what places did you go to or what did you look at?
Okay,
as
that's
sources for
the first thing was like oral family stories and then I referred him to Terry Hawkins. I started following him quite a while ago, and I have an old Windows 7 computer with no printer. So I've got 5 volumes. I get up in the morning, this is pandemic times. I'd get up in the morning and I'd pick out the ones he wanted and then I'd write them in a book. But I couldn't read my own writing, so the rest of the day I'd print them, being an ex-school teacher. And I just the source of all that, like I probably on a page, if I had 6 items, I might only use 1. I mean, there's tons, somebody else could write another book using. So you know, that was the main, and I can't think of any other. A little bit from I did mention family.
So sorry, that was the newspaper accounts that he was.
Yes, if you
Yeah.
go, if you,
Yes.
if some of you are on that site,
I am.
Terry, yeah, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah, and so that's really, that kept me, and I will say, I don't think I would have done as well for 3 years in isolation. I might have got depression, but this kept me going. It gave me a focus. It gave me something to do. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I feel very close to my grandmother. I hope I recreated her. She wasn't anything like me, but I think I caught the essence of who she was and her family. And the only one I had more trouble writing in a sequence, my father, the oldest one, came home from World War I with severe depression and shell shock. And the rest of his life wasn't perfect. So, but that's the way every family has their ups and downs.
Maybe you could read one of the letters that was talking about.
I know you like them, Joan, but I don't think they go.
You know what, I love that idea, Jones, but I love also when you write about, and when the war was over and, that's so, that just.
Just a minute. I will if I can find it quickly.
Sorry, but
No. Had this mark. I may not be able to find it. But anyways, Cherry Harkness is posting the morning that World War I was declared over. I copied pretty well the whole article that was in the Saskatoon Star Phoenix. Oh, I think I found it. So this is direct that Terry took from the newspaper so here it is, November the 12th, 1918. Today's paper had the whole story. I am saving the whole copy as it is full of such details. And here, this is my only quote probably. The apartment blocks surrounding the Phoenix office were the first to realize that something unusual had happened. When the first racket of peace celebration started at 1 a.m. Monday morning, the entire Phoenix staff turned out with everything and anything available in the shape of a noise producer. Some of the staff used these noise makers and they paraded around the block. Cars snorted and honked out of garages, and 2nd Avenue buzzed with a thickening traffic. For a dry town, it was considerably moisture. Chief Donald winked a metaphoric wink at many irregularities, and this was an actual quote. 2 big bonfires were started on 2nd Avenue. One of the fires was so successful that Chief Heath thought it advisable to pass out a cooling stream on its ardor. The formal celebration procession commenced Monday afternoon at 2 p.m. It formed on Spadina Crescent with the return men lining up outside the GW, the Great Western Veterans Association, on 21st. Chief Heath led the way, followed by, and they had to show them off, the hook and ladder and the hose cart. Then came the return soldiers and the Salvation Army band with endless cars and trucks filled with cheering crowds bringing up the rear. And just a little bit more. By 9 o'clock the last night, the second evening's rejoicing was in full swing. The ancient and honorable, and I guess they had this, it was a bus with a sign on "See Saskatoon First." This bus was pressed into service, and oozing citizens at every window and door, it dashed up and down the street. A very impressive 4-in-hand with Kaiser Bill suspended from a pole at the rear. Later on, he went up in smoke. Thank you, I think that's.
I could have you read that whole book.
Well, I assumed you know how to read.
I said, I love to hear you read. it.
Okay,
It means a lot. Thank you.
thank you. Hey, everybody, you shutting it down? Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just. I'd like to thank Margaret again for being with us tonight. She will be sticking around to sign some books, and of course, we have copies of Through My Eyes for sale on that table there. You are welcome to get your copies signed before you purchase them. Just make sure to stop at the cash desk on your way out the door. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Okay, relax.